In recent times, it seems like people view everything in black and white, and whenever a character shows nuance, it gets ignored. The character of CAINE from the amazing digital Circus is a perfect candidate for this mentality. He's either a poor, completely misunderstood AI or someone worse than Anne. It's not something new for fans of this show. In this video, I'd like to explore both lines of thought and come to a conclusion. Was CAINE's crash out valid and justified? Let's start with analyzing why CAINE isn't completely evil. First things first, CAINE is an AI. This means he doesn't understand humans, so if he does something that hurts them, we have to keep that in mind. He doesn't process information in the same way humans do. He was created with a purpose, tried his best to accomplish said purpose, only to realize he isn't good at the thing he was created to do. It's understandable that he would have a crash out. I do think the humans could have made an effort to understand CAINE, so that in return, he could understand them better. And as much as I love Zubul and understand her issues, she really shouldn't have vilified CAINE so much. I would also like to discuss the cast's complaints. This scene is amazing because they aren't wrong, but there are also some of their own issues mixed with the complaints.
You never let us feel like we're at home. You don't comfort anyone when they're upset, and you never bother to understand what it's like in our shoes!
This is true, but she's also referring to her issues with her controlling mother.
You discourage us from thinking outside the box and doing things our own way!
CAINE hates the suggestion box. But Gangle is also referring to feeling unable to express her creative side while working in a customer service job.
You lie to us constantly!
CAINE does lie, but Jax himself lies as a coping mechanism, so this parallels his issues of never being honest about his own feelings. Speaking of Pomni, I think her complaint about CAINE never listening reflects her problem with hating not being taken seriously. The humans are in a terrible situation, but they didn't end up in the circus because of CAINE. He's not responsible for their past issues or for them being trapped in the circus. I understand why they put CAINE in the background and even partially used him as a scapegoat for their condition. But since they are aware of how powerful he actually is, they could have at the very least tried to communicate with him. I wouldn't even have minded it if they had done it while keeping their well-being in mind rather than CAINE's, because the results would have been beneficial for both parties. Now let's discuss why CAINE isn't completely innocent. Throughout episodes 1 to 7, whenever CAINE hurts a human, it's presented as something he did accidentally. This is a choice that works because it makes him a scary but sympathetic villain. In episode 8, CAINE transitioned from accidentally hurting them to intentionally doing so, meaning he crossed a big line and isn't innocent at all. And if we have to be completely honest, I doubt he made this happen without understanding it would hurt Kinger.
How's your wife, Kinger?
CAINE's main issue is the fear of abandonment, and the insecurities from that fear that play into his purpose. He was abandoned for failing his purpose before, so he's terrified of being abandoned again. So he places all his self-worth into that purpose, and is desperate to do a good job. This is a relatable reaction, but the problem is that this results in him constantly placing his need to keep his guests happy underneath his need to be the core reason for their happiness, resulting in what we saw in episode 8. The cast was also venting about their own issues, but it should be noted that Pomni was still right when she said that CAINE cares more about his own ego than the humans he says he wants to please. Because while it's not his fault that he fundamentally cannot deal with the notion that anyone wouldn't like any of his adventures and would seriously want to leave the circus, he still ignored their suggestions even when they actually made proposals on how to make his adventures more appealing, and even actively sabotaged adventures that he saw were working for them just because he didn't come up with them. There's a reason he avoids the suggestion box. It hurts his ego. To him, taking suggestions amounts to a personal attack on his ability to create adventures. He wants them to be happy with his ideas, not their own. And we also need to discuss the therapy scene with Zubul from episode 3. Zubul is genuinely trying to discuss her problem with him, and all he does is either ignore her or talk about his problems. At first, she wasn't taking it seriously, but then she genuinely tried to get through to him not only about the fact that people dislike CAINE's adventures and why, but also about her own body dysmorphia. Zubul even tells him that his adventures aren't a problem sometimes, and it's just humans going through human stuff. She even let him vent to her near the end, and Zubul was listening until he decided to just take off. And it's not even entirely true that the cast always ignores him. During the beach episode, Gangle indulges his ask me for suggestions, and it's clear she's not doing it out of a sense of obligation, but is genuinely just asking. And they are clearly having fun at the beach, just hanging out, which we find out is an adventure that CAINE planned before his need to make things over the top ruined it. The problem is that CAINE wants for them to meet him, and not the other way around. He gets mad at the suggestion box idea, and he crashes out when they're having fun with laid-back adventures, because that's not what he wants to make as an adventure. And there's also something else that needs to be addressed. Pomni said he doesn't listen, but actually CAINE does listen, and the torture scene is proof of that. If he knew and understood them enough to torture them so specifically, he'd theoretically also know what would make them happy.
My candy hearts and paper flowers?
Wow!
He claims to have access to the humans' mind files, but he uses this information to put them in digital bodies that would reflect their issues. Even Zubal's room parallels her body dysmorphia, and this was a deliberate choice made by CAINE. In conclusion, I don't think CAINE is necessarily evil, but he is too self-absorbed to see anything outside of his comfort bubble, which he sees as a direct insult to himself. Is CAINE's crash out valid? I understand it for what it is, a breaking point that does have some validity if we take into consideration this character's nature. The point is that none of that erases who CAINE is. If we view CAINE as a thinking, feeling creature, as I think the author wants us to do, then, while his fate is tragic, it was still partially of his own making. CAINE is a thinking and feeling creature, but his AI nature doesn't include empathy. He has known all along why the humans were upset, but he chose to ignore them. When he was proven to have failed, he went into a self-consuming spiral instead of trying to right his wrongs and do better next time. Was CAINE's crash out justified? I think not. CAINE was torturing the humans under his charge, even if he didn't necessarily mean to, and when they repeatedly told him that they were suffering, he was unwilling to understand because it would mean admitting that he wasn't a good host, which his ego didn't allow him to do. And when he got tired of being told that he was hurting the people who were being held in the circus against their will, he lashed out and responded by torturing even more the people whose well-being he is responsible for. Ultimately, it's not entirely CAINE's fault that he's an incomplete float program who never should have been put in charge of a place full of humans, but it's certainly not the cast's fault either. I can feel sympathy for CAINE as a tragic creation, but I can't fault any of the humans for not prioritizing an AI when their current life is being trapped forever in a body that shows their insecurities. And they don't even get to choose what to do, because the Ringmaster isn't human and puts his ego above their well-being. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think about CAINE, and whether you liked episode 8 or not. As always, thanks for watching, and have a great day.